Welcome to Fiction Freaks, the book club you've always wanted to join.
We're your hosts, Brandy and Diane, and today we're going to be doing a little book review. Brandy and I will each dive into a book that we've read and just chat about it and see where it goes from there.
Minisode 5. We're jumping back into our normal Minisodes reviews. We haven't done one in a minute. I don't honestly
Yeah,
think since July, but
it's been a long time.
want to get these going again.
And we have read a lot of books since July.
Yeah, it was hard to pick just one, but
I agree.
do you want to kick us off?
Well, actually, you go first because I have a book I think that we've both read, so then we can chat about that too.
Okay. So the book I am reviewing it's going to be backwards on the screen, and for those listening, I'm showing the cover. It's called Boys Don't Cry by Fiona Scarlett. So it's a book I picked up in Ireland. I think this is her debut. I'm pretty
Okay.
sure this is her debut. And it was shortlisted for the Ann Post Irish Book Awards Newcomer of the Year. Honestly, I think this deserves a Booker Award. I just think this deserves all the awards. It's so good.
When did it come out, Brandy?
Well, I'm going to give details on it. So hold on one second. So this book, well, the version I have, which I don't know how many have been released, but it was first published in 2021 by Faber and Faber. I think there is a US version. I don't know when that was published, but it was initially published in 2021. And I do think it was her. Yeah, I think it was her debut work. She's a primary school teacher. Yes, Boys Don't Cry is her debut novel. Fiona Scarlett lives in Dublin, or is from Dublin. She lives in County Kildare with her husband and two children. She was awarded the Dennis O'Driscoll Literary Bursary through Kildare County Council in 2019 and a literature bursary through the National Arts Council Ireland in 2020, and then wrote this book. So this book is about two brothers, Joe and his little brother Finn, and they live in working class Dublin. Sorry, I'm reading my notes. That's why I keep looking
No, you're
down.
fine. I have it too.
With their mom and sometimes their dad, who's a drug dealing hard man. And they have to navigate their way through so much tragedy and the bonds of traumatic family history. So, out of the gate, this is like my
Yep.
bread and butter. The story is told with dual narration between the boys. So, out of the gate, you're barreled into both the past and present day because the timelines jump forward and back continuously between the boys, but not in a confusing way. It works really, really well with the narration and for the overall story, and it's very easy to follow. And I don't think the ending would have had the impact it did if it
Okay.
wasn't told this way. So I I cannot say too much else about it other than that because I will give away the whole story. And this is one of those books that you truly have to experience and read. You have to go into it sort of blind
Okay.
because there's so much that happens, but there's also not a lot that happens. But I ugly cried, sobbed, like
That's rare for you.
sobbed, like genuinely full body, like convulsing sobs. This is one of the saddest books I've ever read.
Oh my gosh.
It's like devastating. And I have not seen honestly a review that didn't agree, like didn't say what I just said. Like
Okay.
this book is just like utterly. Oh, I don't know. I like it. There's not maybe a better word than just devastating, but the writing is impeccable. The way in which the author, Fiona, she writes with such compassion, but also really nails it on the head, the emotions of all of the characters. You get such a broad and detailed scope of all the main people in the book, and it feels very realistic, and I think that's part of why it's so sad in the end, because you can see this happening. And I think the other parts of it is, for anyone that has ever looked sort of into the history of Ireland or has been to Ireland, they can, and you can visualize the neighborhoods that this is taking place in, and you can sort of visualize all the places they're going and the things they're doing. It also becomes more realistic, and it's that much hard hitting because you can go, oh yeah, I can
Yeah.
actually viscerally see this going on. And it's also plays a lot on, I think, the ties of sort of working class life and kids taking on paths in life because they're ordained to, right? They don't have any way out. And so they just do, for instance, like a life of crime or doing bad shit or whatever, because at the end of the day, no matter how much they try, they can't break through that barrier.
Yeah.
And this speaks really heavily to that, and really heavily to the working class in Dublin. And after I read this book, I sort of went online and looked up Reddit just to see what people who are from Dublin specifically had to say about it. And there were so many just personal anecdotes of like, yeah, this is very accurate. This is accurate now. Was accurate 20 years ago. This is very much what is going on in our neighborhoods. And it shows a great example of how hard it is to break out of sort of the middle class area, I guess. I don't know. And I know I'm not giving a lot, but I really don't want to give a lot because I am afraid of taking away from the book. But there's crime and there's a death and there's there's twists and there's turns and just really wonderful, sad characters. And I love this book so much. And I wish more people were talking about it because I've literally never heard of her. I've never
Has
seen
she
it.
written anything since?
I don't think so.
Okay.
I have never seen that. I haven't seen this on Bookstagram. I haven't seen this on TikTok. I've not seen this book anywhere, which is such a bummer. So please read this book and get back to me, but like be prepared, like be emotionally ready to deep dive into this. I also read it, I think, in like 12 hours.
Oh, wow.
Like I started it and I mean,
It's a decent, normal, average size
it's
book.
238 pages. So it's not short or by any means, but I started reading it and just could not stop reading it. And actually, I was in a coffee shop when I had started reading it, and this guy, he kept like looking at me, and I think probably because I was just like so deep into this
Were
book,
you like
and
sobbing in
I
the
wasn't
middle of the?
no, because I wasn't to that point yet. But he was like, "What are you reading?" He was just like, "What are you reading?" And I showed him, and he was like, "Well, what's it about?" And I was like, well, I tend to read really sad books." And he was like, "Okay." So, and I was like, "This is just a sad fucking book." And I was like, "I don't know.
The end.
I don't know how to explain it." And he was like, "Okay." And I think he was concerned because he legitimately wouldn't stop like checking in with me. And I was like, "Dude, I'm good. Like I'm
He's
good."
probably now thinking like, why does she only read sad books? Like, is she okay?
Well, honestly, he was reading the Bible, which who goes to a coffee
Well,
shop and
maybe.
reads the Bible? So there's a lot. I feel like we could deep dive into that, but I digress. That has nothing to do with this book.
This isn't a therapy session.
So yes, this that wasn't really a review. Well, I mean, it was a review, but I can't give more, and I want
Okay.
to.
If you
I will say though, real quick, because I don't love Goodreads. We know this, but on Goodreads, it does have an average of 4.32 stars, which is pretty rare to have
Yeah.
that steady of reviews incoming. And if you go and look into it, if you look at people's reviews, almost all of them are like, I cried. I was devastated. I was sobbing, etc., and so forth. And I think also to connect it to some other reads. So if you liked A Little Life by Hanya Yanagihara, if you liked Young Mungo, if you liked, let's see, what's another, Shuggie Bain. If you like any mostly Irish authors, you're gonna like this because you already know it's gonna be sad and well written. And those are all I think those are all written by other Irish authors.
A Little Life didn't make you cry though, did it?
Oh yeah, it made me sob.
Oh, it did? Okay.
A Little Life is one of the saddest books I've ever read.
What would you
It's
say?
legitimately unfortunate. I agree with a lot of reviews that it is trauma porn because it is
Yeah.
just trauma after trauma after trauma, but it is so sad. It's really sad.
And that's a thick boy. That's a big book,
Oh, I
isn't
think it's
it?
like 600 pages or
Yeah.
something.
That's a lot of sadness to expose yourself to.
Well, it is sad and it's different. So, A Little Life is so controversial. Honestly, we would probably do a whole episode on that book and still not get through it. It's very, very controversial. And I want to be clear that I don't actually support that author. I don't like that author, but I love that book. And I think it's very important for me to stress that because I think that that author, and I tried to read her other books. I think okay, I don't want to get into it honestly because I'm going to like take it to a whole nother thing, but I don't like her as a
Okay.
person, but I do love A Little Life, the book.
Okay.
However, a lot of the stuff that happens in the book, I mean, there is literally child rape, child abuse. There is sexual trauma outside of that. It's heavy and it is heavy all the way through.
Mm.
And it doesn't stop being heavy. And then the end is just like fuck. Like you just get run over by a truck at the end. So you go through all these different traumatic events and they just get heavier and heavier and heavier. And then
It doesn't let
there's
up.
there's no balance for it. And I love that book and I want people to read it, but I hesitate to recommend it to people because I think it's a very specific type of reader that
Okay.
should read that book. And I don't think you would like it. I don't think you would like that book. I don't think that you and because you didn't like one of Charlotte McConaughey's books that I really liked, there's just a lot of like I think you are so pragmatic with certain things that reading a book like this, I think you'd be like, nope, not real. You know, like you would separate it too much. I think without just being able to read it for like it being like trauma porn is sort of what it is. Like
Or I'd probably go the other way, which is what Charlotte McConaughey did to me, where it like physically made me ill. Like reading about like the animal cruelty and like that like made me sick. So I can't imagine. I mean, animals are one thing, but human cruelty, yeah, I don't know if I could get behind that. But maybe that will be something that I read, and then we can just have a whole episode where we just chat about the insanity of that.
yeah, I don't know that I'd recommend you to read it.
Okay, fair enough.
Like I just don't think you would enjoy I don't think you would enjoy the experience of it. Just
Okay,
knowing the books that you like and how you enjoy the books that you enjoy, I think it would be a really like heavy process of work for you.
sure. Okay, yeah, that's fair.
And I just don't I can't the
We don't
other
want to
thing
put any more time into
well
that.
yeah, and also like Kate read A Little Life and I thought she would like it because she tends to
Okay,
like a lot of books that I like when it comes to sort of sad shit.
yeah,
And she didn't like it. And because of the reasons I think that you wouldn't like it, because of how heavy it goes on some of the trauma stuff and how it, I think, focuses on depicting people a certain way, which I don't disagree with her, but I think that's how you would interpret some of it too. And it
sure.
became unenjoyable for her because it took away from the overall experience of the book.
Okay, Yeah,
And
that makes
also
sense.
that big of a book.
That's a lot of time to dedicate to something you're
Yeah.
not sure if I would like. So
Yeah. Yeah. I don't even in general, I don't ever recommend that book to people because I'm like, I liked it so much, but I also think I'm strange in my book choices, and this is not like an every person like book read.
yeah.
I don't think it's. However, back to my review, I do think that everybody should read this book, Boys Don't Cry by Fiona Scarlett. I just can't tell you any more details because it will ruin it, and I don't want to ruin or take away from how good it plays out.
Yeah,
Good in
we're
a
in
sad way because it's sad, but it's so good.
well, and we're a no spoiler podcast. I believe that. We'll let you know
Yes.
before spoilers happen. Because that's like the worst thing on the planet is just to ruin someone's reading experience before
Yes.
they even have the chance to like get there. That's just terrible.
Yes. I'm thinking of rereading this book
When did
just
you
for
read this?
right when I got back from Ireland. So,
Not too long ago.
yeah, October, November, I think.
Okay.
Because I've been on a kick of just deep diving into really accepting my sad book lifestyle. And there's just no better way to do that than to read Irish authors.
Well, and you did fair enough buy like 100 books while you were over there.
I did. I did buy a shit ton. So I had to ship them back to myself
I
from
love that.
the middle of the
Honestly,
country.
I think that you've reached another like a pinnacle of like being a bookish person when you've done that.
I think also when I stopped, I think I shipped like 30 books and then I still had like 12 in my suitcase after that when I came home. That's insane.
That is insane.
That's absolutely insane. I think I was only there for what, 9 days or something, and that to me is like there's
Okay,
something.
so with that, out of all those books that you've read that you got over there, how many of them have been like just knocked out of the park, like solid reads for you?
There's only been one that wasn't.
Okay. That's pretty high
It's easier
praise.
to it's easier to say it the other way because there's only
Yeah.
been one that wasn't, and it was a book I thought I would love, and it was similar to sort of my normal vibe. It was sad. It was about a relationship between friends, and it just fell flat for me.
Okay.
And that was actually a huge bummer because I waited to get a copy of it till I was there so I could get like the UK cover and printing of it. But, it is what it is. And I'm still keeping it because I feel like I was able to get such a cool copy of it that I want to keep it. But I might, if anything, it'll be one of those things I try and gift to someone that I think might enjoy it more than
Sure.
I did. But yeah, only one. Only one I didn't like. All the others I'm still not through all of them just because
Okay.
our TBR lists continue to grow. So I'm always finding other ones I want to read before. But so far, yeah, just that one. I think that's an accomplishment. I think that I know I won't shut up about this, you guys, but Irish authors are just the pinnacle of good writing. And it makes sense because Dublin is a UNESCO literary city. And there's so many famous writers from that country. But y'all, it's true. I don't know what is happening over there, but I wish I was in on it. I wish I could
They
take some of
get
that
you.
talent.
They get you. Do you think that maybe have you ever done a DNA test? Are you Irish? Maybe that's
I'm
why.
not, I'm Scottish.
Me too.
My great, great, great grandfather was some famous dude. There's a statue of him in northern Scotland.
Yeah, did you ever go visit that statue?
No, because I haven't been back since I lived there, so I haven't had a chance to. I want to at some point when Matt and I get over there. I'm gonna try and go visit it if it's still standing. But because I don't know anything about him, so I don't know if he was like shitty.
Good or bad?
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I
Yeah.
don't know if it's worth it for it to still be standing, but it was still up as of a few years ago, like when I last looked into it.
Okay.
Yeah. Okay, so what's yours?
Well, I'm gonna continue the sad legacy, and I want to talk about the 100 years of Margot and Lenni.
Oh,
Um,
yeah. Have we not talked about this?
I think I have briefly mentioned that I liked it on audio, but I don't think that we've actually discussed the book, which I thought would be fun because we've both read it, and we both liked it.
I
So,
actually got it from the publisher. The publisher actually sent me a copy of that
oh, cool!
before.
I didn't know
Yeah, which
that.
was really cool. Yeah.
That is very cool. All right, hold on. Let me pull up my notes real quick. Okay, why am I not? Here we go. All right, so this book is called The 100 Years of Lenni and Margot. It's by Marianne Cronin. This is also, despite the things that are not wrong or are wrong with Goodreads and are not wrong with Goodreads, this has a 4.3 rating with a lot of ratings. I gave it 5 stars personally. But essentially, there is a 17-year-old. Her name is Lenni. She is, I believe, terminally ill, if I remember correctly,
She is. Yeah.
and she lives in like a hospital that has a lot of in care patients that are there like long term, and she's kind of just your average 17-year-old in the sense of she's a little quirky. She's trying to find out who she is, figure out honestly how to live with a timestamp, which is just I can't it's unimaginable. So she ends up going to this art class that's being put on by the hospital. They're trying to get her to meet people. She hasn't made any friends with any of the other terminally ill children that are there, and so they put her in this art class, and she ends up going, I think, to the wrong class at some point, and stumbles into the old folks class. And they're like, oh, you're in the wrong place. And she's like, well, can I stay and stick around anyways? And they said yes. So she ends up sitting right next to Margot, and they strike up this really fun, beautiful friendship, and it's just kind of explores their individual lives, their path that has crossed together. And it's funny. It is sad. I remember specifically crying. And I listened to this on audio. So I'm just like in my car, like, Um, but the narrator for this audiobook is insane. I actually need to look up the name of that person and we can put it in our show notes, but incredibly talented. And it's it's a really good introspective of how hard life can be, but also how beautiful life can be in even like the really sad and terrible ways that people end up, the scenarios that they're in. And so it just is a really great book, I think, all around. I don't think I've ever talked to someone who hasn't enjoyed the book. And I love a quirky old person and I love a weird young person. And just with them combined, it just makes for a really outstanding cast of characters. And it's a really beautiful story, particularly Margot's story, because, of course, she's been around for almost 100 years and she's lived an incredible life, and it's just really fun to have it go flip-flop between back in time and in present day, to hear her story and to see how Lenni affects her in her older age. So I just really loved it.
Yeah, I loved it too. I honestly, I read it so long ago though that I don't remember like details of it, just that I loved it, just that I really enjoyed reading it and it was fun and it was laugh out loud funny on some of the
Yeah.
parts. I do remember that.
Yep, I agree. And I like I think too this is probably one of, if not the best, this and Project Hail Mary were probably my top two audiobooks that I've ever listened to. And I just remember flying through it. Like I was trying to find excuses and reasons to like be in my car or, to do chores and listen to it. Like I just wanted to be listening to it all the time. It was just so good. And I just remember when it was over, I was like so sad that it was over. I didn't want it to be done. And um yeah, it was a really good story. And I would recommend it to anyone.
Yeah, there's not a lot of books like that where you feel like you don't want it to end.
Mm-hmm.
And that I remember I mean, I have my copy still. I don't always keep like advanced readers copies, but that is one that I kept because I was like, this is a good book and I feel like it's gonna do really well and I want like my copy forever.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, and I think I tend to get pretty nostalgic when series end that I really like because you've been with them for so long. But it's not like it's not very common for me to have a standalone book that I'm like when it's over, I'm like, oh man, I wish there was another one. Like I wish that we got to
And I'm
learn
over
more.
here, I get devastated every time I finish a good book. I get emotionally just like I deteriorate. And like the other thing I am so I I want to talk a minute go back to the book I was just talking about too after sort of you saying that because when I finished Lenni and Margot, I remember the similar feeling of being like, man, that was so good. Whatever I read next is going to be hard to get into because I had such a good experience reading that. And when I finished Boys Don't Cry, I remember specifically, I was sitting in my kitchen at my island, bawling my eyes out with this book. And Matt wasn't home yet, sitting there and thinking in my head, like, what the fuck? Like, how am I gonna read? How am I ever gonna read again? Like, how am I ever gonna read another book? Because no book is ever going to affect me as
Mm,
heavily as this book did. And then in my head being like, there's no character that will ever compare to these boys. There's no anything that I can experience. And I find myself, there's not many books I do this with, but this is one of those books that I'm continuously comparing my experience with.
okay.
Where if I'm in a book and I'm like, this just can't meet me where the other book did, where Boys Don't Cry did. And I think I always talk about this, but like Sally Rooney is one of those authors for me that she continuously for me creates. She brings, she takes, I think, writing or the experience of reading writing to a level that I'm always comparing other books to. And
Hmm.
Boys Don't Cry is one of those where I think about it constantly, especially when I'm getting into a new book, because I'm like, will it meet expectations? Probably not. And how hard is it going to take for me to get past that? It's probably gonna be very hard. And I think, but Margot and Lenni was one of those too. Like I think I think I like took a break from like reading. I think I
Yeah.
took like a week or two to be like, I can't just go from this to something else because I know it's not going to be good.
I get really jealous of people who get to read particular books for the first time. Like if I've already read it and someone's reading it and they haven't read it before, and I'm like, ah, like what I would give to reread that book for the very first time. And
I
I
have,
remember,
sorry, no, keep
no,
going.
go ahead.
No, you
Go
go.
ahead.
No, you go.
No, you go.
No, you go. I'm not
I
going
don't
to do
even
it.
remember what I was going to say now.
Well, you were saying I remember. So you were talking about some book first experience, but
Yeah, it'll come to me. I'll come back to it.
I did. Okay. I want to say two more things about Boys Don't Cry because I'm thinking about it more as we're like talking about it. And maybe I could have prepared better. Whatever. Fuck off. So I did want to bring up that it has domestic violence, drugs, illness, a lot of grief, um, and some like hard hitting shit. I do want to preemptively, I guess, trigger warning that
Sure.
because it's very explicit in the book. And I know a lot of people do not like reading about that. And so if you don't want to have any experience with that, don't read this book because it's throughout the book. You can't just like skip over it because it is a integral part of the story. And I don't know if I can't remember if I said this already in the earlier when I was explaining it, but the story is set in a flats complex in Dublin. So, and the author is from Dublin, which I think is why it's so accurate to the area. But there's drug dealing and I think domestic violence, but also regular violence, among other things. So, and there's daddy issues and shit like that. So, I probably
Who
shouldn't.
doesn't have those?
Well, that's true. But I just feel like I should tell everybody that because I know I said that it was sad, but there are aspects to it that I think a lot of people do not want to read about. And so I want to tell you that now so you don't come back later and be like, hey, you should have told me that there's all this shit happening.
Yeah.
Because, yeah,
I always appreciate a heavy content warning. I have come to expect that the books that you read typically may
yeah,
have some of those things. So when you
usually.
recommend them to me, I kind of know what I'm getting myself into. For those of us who are listening that don't know, I think that's much appreciated.
Yeah. I mean, I think in general, the best sort of sad lit books have one of those facets running through them, whether it's violence or family trauma or drama or family violence or drugs or abuse. Like there's always something in it across the board. I'm honestly trying to think of like any of my favorite books that don't have
Well, because I
something
mean,
like that.
there's a story from that, right? It propels you and has this like innate ability to pull someone in because a lot of people either can't identify with that and it's interesting to them, or they can identify with that and that's why it's interesting to them. So I think that makes total sense.
That's why I like memoirs so much, I
Yeah,
think.
I do too.
And the best memoirs are the most fucked up.
Yeah. It's I know we've talked about this, but like I'm getting away from rating memoirs because I saw something that someone put out recently. It was like an Instagrammer or something, Bookstagrammer or whatever. And they were basically like, who am I to like rate your life story?
I
And
think I said that last time
I was
we
like,
were
that's a
recording
great,
too.
yeah, it makes a lot of sense that you can either say you like a memoir or you don't like a memoir, but to put like a number, it's like a scale on that is kind of just like a little tone deaf. So I'm definitely going to step away from that. I agree with you wholeheartedly on that.
Yeah, I'm not reading books anymore at all, just in general. But I, especially the memoir thing, because that's your life. And
Yeah.
it's hard to be like,
Put yourself
yeah,
out
yeah.
there like entirely and then someone be like 1 star. Your life is worth 1 star.
There, there is, I think, oh, the only memoir, there's one memoir I really hated that I've ever read. And it was, you liked this book, but it was Education.
Oh, yeah, I remember that.
I hated that book. I hated that book. And but it didn't have to do with anything that happened to her. It wasn't
I
like her
think you just
life.
said it was like repetitive and
It was I just thought it was poorly written. I thought the
yeah.
story was interesting, but I thought the way it was presented
Okay.
was poor. And I still stand by that because every time I see like a good review of it, I'm like I sort of look at it and go, did I miss something? And then I remember and I'm like, no, I didn't miss anything. I just couldn't get past the writing of it,
Sure.
the
And
writing itself.
I liked the story part of it. And saying like is not the appropriate word. I was flabbergasted by her life and what happened to her and her parents, and that was the part that I was like, did this it was almost like, did this really happen? Because
Mhm.
I couldn't imagine all the other things that were in that book that came together to create her whole life story, that many things could happen to one individual. But I guess, I mean, you know, that probably happens to more people than I would think, but it was just
Yeah,
crazy.
I just remember when I was reading it, I was like, "Who edited this fucking book?"
Mm,
Because I was like, "This story probably could have been told a lot better." And I think that was my issue, which I have an issue with a lot of books like that, is the poor editing or
like grammatical stuff and
just like the
yeah.
shit that's not even the writer's fault. That's like that actually is the editor and like the publisher's fault. Like you shouldn't be putting this out formed this way, but whatever. It is what it is. So, and is that the one? No, I was thinking there was another memoir that was made into a movie, but it was a different one. It
That's
was the
Made, I
elegy
think.
of what?
Made, that one was a memoir that was made into a
No, I'm
movie.
not talking about that. It's another like southern. It was it was what's it? What is it called? It's I will think of it. I'll have to like put it in the show notes if I can't.
Okay.
Remember? Oh, Hillbilly Elegy, a memoir of a family and culture in crisis. Did you ever read that?
Mm-mm.
It was made into a movie or a show. Movie show. It doesn't matter. One of the things, but and it's a very highly rated memoir, and it's about a boy that he grows up dirt poor in the backwoods of Kentucky, and then he becomes a Yale educated lawyer in DC, and it's about his growing up. But and it was turned into a movie or show, like I said, I don't know which one. Sorry, Dee Dee is behind me making weird noises. And it was like I said, it was very highly rated. Sorry, my thoughts are like all over the place because I'm trying to remember while I'm like talking to you about it. It was another memoir I really, really disliked because to me it felt like a a pastor preaching.
Mm.
There's a lot of religious aspects in it, and not in a way of being like, I found religion and this is why it worked for me, but being like, you have to turn to God and you have to do this, that, and the other. And
Okay.
I just in general across the board, if any book has that, I'm usually like out right away. That's just not for me.
Yeah. Well, it
Eh,
pulls away from the other message and tone of the book. It just becomes kind of in your face, like telling you how to feel about things.
Right. And I DNF'd it. So I honestly don't know. And I cannot speak to if it changed in the end or what else. And I'm like I said, who the fuck am I? Because they made it into like a movie and a show, and it's like a really popular memoir. So I'm likely missing the point, and that's fair. But that was sort of that, and then I think Education were two of the memoirs I read. Where after reading them, and at that point I was rating like
Hmm.
memoirs, just sort of as standard books, and then me being like, I don't really think that's fair. I don't really think it's appropriate for me to put a rating on someone else's experiences just because they didn't resonate with me.
Yeah.
And so, like, even though I can appreciate that I didn't enjoy those books, I understand why people did. And I understand why they continue to be really popular. Cause, like you said, it's wild to think about those things happening to people and those being real experiences that people went through.
Yeah. Well, that actually brings me, because I know we're going to chat about, what we've recently read and what we're going to be reading, but I just finished Matthew Perry's memoir.
Yeah,
Um,
I think we talked about this. Did you audio it?
I did audio it.
Yeah.
Man, that was sad. I It baffles me for like really well-known celebrity memoirs when they chat about all this and you're going back in your head to like, oh, I remember that point I remember being alive when that, was happening, and you couldn't even tell that those things were happening in the background of that person's life, because on screen they just seem their normal happy-go-lucky selves. You may see some like physical differences, but it's just absolutely mind-boggling you that stuff goes on, and you're just sitting here like having no concept of it happening. It's just really crazy.
Yeah, I am not a Friends fan, and so I never was like a Matthew Perry not fan, but not fan. Like, I never just watched anything that he was in. So I have no interest in his memoir.
Yeah. Well, and I
But
forgot how many movies he was in. He was in like several movies. I
he was
forgot
in a
about that
lot.
too.
Yeah, and
Yeah.
I do remember his not I don't remember anything about his. I don't know why I said it like that. But I think you had told me, or you had mentioned, or I read this somewhere, that he was a drug addict, correct?
Mhm.
Yes. And so he dealt with that for a really long time,
Oh
and
yeah.
that affected everything in his life. And I remember hearing something about that, and that is heavily apparent in his memoir, right? He talks about that a lot.
Oh, that the whole memoir is
Okay.
essentially about his struggle with addiction, and how all of that a struggle seeped into other facets of his life, but all of it boiled down to abandonment issues as a child and feeling not worthy, and then him coming to that realization, through like AA and stuff. And then as he gets to, well, what we know now to be the end of his life, he was in a place where he was like, something's just wrong with my brain. Like, and no matter what I do, that can't ever change, and I won't ever be able to fix that. And I will just have to take everything one day at a time forever. And it's just like, now knowing, that he's gone, that was just like, oh my God. Like, I know that experience listening to that would have been way different if he was still alive. But the fact that I know that he's not anymore changed the whole like spectrum of how I like ingested what he was saying. It was really
That makes
wild.
sense.
Yeah. But um what are you reading right now?
Right now, I'm reading Scythe by Neal Shusterman. It's a series. I'm on book one. I actually picked it up at a community book swap.
Cool.
Someone had brought it. I didn't know anything about it. I grabbed it. It is so good. It's a little bit Hunger Games ish. A little bit. What's another like? Um.
Divergent?
Um.
Like kind
Yes,
of dystopian? Okay.
a little bit. No, it is dystopian. So
Okay.
it's set in the future where there's no disease. Disease has been eradicated. Nobody dies.
Hmm.
You cannot die unless you are killed, which is by a scythe. So
Okay.
there's no disease. There's food is like genetically made. So nobody goes, there's no hunger. There's no nothing. Everything is like perfect, essentially.
Utopia.
Yeah. And so I guess it's utopian, not dystopia. I don't know. We could talk about what the difference is, but I'm going to
That'd be
bypass.
interesting actually later.
I Googled it once, dystopia versus utopia. And I know that there is distinct differences, but that's not up for debate right now. So in this essentially perfect future, there are scythes, and scythes are the only people that are allowed to kill, and they kill to control the population. To become a scythe, you have to be chosen by a scythe to become a mentee, and then they mentor you, and then you have to go in front of the conclave, is what they call it, but it's essentially a group of it's all the scythes that are scythes, and they choose you after you've gone through all of your training and your apprenticeship. They can
And they're
choose
human.
you. So everybody is human,
Okay.
but it's kind of weird because you can, what do they call it? They call it they call it changing over, where when you get to a certain age, you can change over and go back to any age above 18 that you want to.
Hmm.
And it like physically, so there's people that are like 200 years old, 1,000 years old, but their bodies are like 30.
Okay.
So everybody is human, but the human we think is not the human that is
Mm.
present in this day. And there's
Okay.
one scene I just got to where this, they call it a tone, but it's a cult. Essentially, it's really like a religious cult. And they had this bowl, and the bowl was all the diseases from our time. So there was Ebola, there was all kinds of shit in this bowl.
Dysentery.
All everything, and nobody can get sick from it anymore. So the guy was like stuck his whole arm in, and he was like, and he licked his finger, and he's like, can't do shit. Like this doesn't do shit to us. We just keep it as a reminder of what humanity used to be. So also you don't feel pain because you have these things called nanites in your body. So as soon as you have any sort of injury, it shoots your body with morphine and like different pain relievers. And so you don't heal pain. And also, oh, this is probably important to know because of the Scythe thing. So if you die, it's called deadish, not died. And you go to a revival center and you're revived. So the only way you can actually die is if a Scythe kills you, because you cannot be revived if a Scythe kills you, because a Scythe's decision is ultimate.
Okay. And
So
I
this,
imagine there's probably people who would prefer not to be alive, but they can't help that.
well, sort of, but that's sort of the idea of like the changeover. Because if you get to
Okay.
a point where your like body is, you can upgrade, you can get different like nanites, you can change your body makeup so you're like skinny. You can like you can do all this weird shit that's
That's so interesting. I've never heard of a world in a book like this before.
right.
It's
So it
very
is
unique.
very, it's very interesting. And the Scythes are above. Okay, so here's the other thing: is that the essentially the internet gets absorbed by what is called, so the cloud gets absorbed to what's now called the Thunderhead, and the Thunderhead runs everything. So there's no government,
Okay.
there's no anything, because the Thunderhead is AI, but the AI is non-emotional. So they're able to run everything efficiently. So there's no problems. So there's no crime even. There's nothing. There's
Hmm.
just like living essentially, and then you've got the Scythes who control the population, and the way they control the population is random. They have the
Okay.
ability to choose whoever you want, but in the grand scheme of things, because people can live to be so old, your chance of being Scythe is 1% of your whole life. So it's very low,
Hmm.
but it can happen, and they can Scythe anyone, a baby, a teen, a kid. You could be the highest of high and very rich. You could be, there's also no poverty. So if people that choose to lead simple lives are doing it just to be like austere, there's no real reason for it. But the book is about two characters, Citra and Rowan, who get chosen by a Scythe to apprentice. Neither one of them want this job. And that's the whole reason they get chosen, because you're not supposed to want to kill people to
Yeah.
be chosen to kill people. And then they get chosen to apprentice, they start their apprenticeship, and then comes like the bad guys. And this is where I'm currently at, trying to figure out like what's going to happen,
Hmm.
because there's a little bit of mystery tied in. So this won't ruin anything for anybody that wants to read this series, and I highly recommend everybody read this because it's very good. I'm fully immersed and I'm really, really enjoying it. But there is a group of Scythes. Oh, also, Scythes, when they become Scythes, they rename themselves, and they can pick any important person from history. So they tend to pick like philosophers and scientists from our day who created things, and that becomes their name forevermore,
Okay.
and they're never called like their name before that. But there is a group of Scythes, and they're bad. And they're bad in the sense of they do this thing called like mass. Oh, it's also called gleaning. It's not called killing, it's called gleaning. And they do mass gleanings where, because they have a quota they have to fill like every quarter, and they do it all at once where like in one of the scenes they go onto a plane and they kill everyone on the plane. And that's where I'm at, is trying to figure out, well, as I'm reading through this group of particular Scythes, what's this leading to? Like, why did they introduce this group? Why are they
Mhm.
showing the perspective of this group compared, with this other storyline, and what's going to happen, and what's the penultimate like ending here, or
Yeah.
where is this going? And I'm like 3/4 done of the first book, and it's getting really I mean, it's very, very interesting. And the
How many
world bit,
books are there?
I think there's 3.
Okay.
I don't quote me on that. I know there's for sure 2, but I think that there's 3. I'm definitely ordering probably tonight the other ones, because I think I just want to like fly through the series because it's really good. And I hope that this becomes, I think it would be a really good TV show. I think it'd be a
Mm.
really good series, especially with all like the green screen stuff they can do now. I think they could
Mhm.
make it really cool. But it's real, I think you would really like it. It's a good book, and I'm flying through it. It's so interesting.
I'd heard very good things about that, for years, and it's been kind of in the back of my mind, but then, all these new ones come out, and it's the ooh and ah of, like, the new fantasies, but I
Yeah.
I for sure want to read this at some point. Maybe I'll
So
borrow it from you and all your copies that you get.
there's 4 books. There's
Okay,
Scythe, Thunderhead, The Toll, and Gleanings.
okay.
And I was looking at the boxed set. There is like a box set available. Well, now someone's saying that it's a trilogy, but I'm finding 4. So maybe the Gleaning, or maybe the 4th one is like coming out soon.
Maybe it was kind of like how, Red Rising was, where it started off as a trilogy, and then they added books on the back end.
Yes. Yeah, and it is YA. Oh, and also to be clear, this is dystopian because that's what it says on the summary. So I was right, even though I may not know what the difference is between that and Utopia. What are you currently reading? You just finished Crescent City 3.
Yeah, girl, finished that last night. Have a lot of thoughts, but I will wait until you get there.
It's gonna be a long time because I still have
Okay,
to
that's fine.
do books 1 and 2.
You'll probably finish it before the next one comes out because it will take years. I have a lot of thoughts. If anybody wants to DM me to chat about them, I will happily do that. So you'll be happy to know that this week I will be starting Fourth Wing. So we can
Ooh,
chat about that.
I'm curious what you think of 4 things. We'll definitely have to talk about it because you read so much fantasy
Yeah.
that I think you're either gonna love or hate 4th Wing. I
Okay.
don't think there's gonna be an in between for you because of how much you read fantasy and how much you really love it. I So yeah, I'm curious about this. My brother-in-law and I text about 4th Wing all the time because he started reading the second one, and he would just like text me like one word text, and I'd be like, wait till you get to this page, and he'd be like, I'm there, and I'd be like, oh.
Well, and I texted Kayleen and Sierra last night, and I was like, "Finish Crescent City 3." I said, "You'll be happy to know that I can report I'll be starting Fourth Wing this week." And they were like, "Yes!" So I was like, "Okay, well, if the majority of my friends have enjoyed it, I'm sure there's something behind that. Like
It's
I'll
just
like it."
it's such a fun book, and what's interesting, you sent me that Instagram reel last night about that podcast that was talking about Sally Rooney and how
Oh, the
people that are,
Shameless podcast.
yes, I think so. Yes. So, and about people that are super harsh against Sally Rooney just want to hear themselves speak, essentially. I think it's the same thing with Fourth Wing. I think people that go out of their way to make like full 3-minute TikToks about how shitty Fourth Wing is and how bad the second book was, I'm like, you're just being a hater, because there's a reason that the Fourth Wing is so popular. There's a reason that so many people enjoy this book. It's not meant to be a Pulitzer Prize winning book. It's meant to be enjoyed, and it's meant to be fun. And that's exactly what it is. It's an enjoyable book. It's an enjoyable fantasy book that has a good storyline.
Yeah.
And I think people just hate on it. I mean, I'm sure that someone out there is making a valid point about it, but
also,
I'm
who cares?
I'm
Like,
like, you're missing the point. You're missing the point of
yeah.
it. Like, it's just fun. I genuinely, like, I think Fourth Wing is just such a fun book. I thoroughly enjoyed my entire experience of reading both of the books. I just had so much fun, and I devoured both of them. I read them so quick because I was like, I can't wait to just like
Yeah.
keep knowing more of what's happening, and I love these characters, and I think it's so fun. And the one thing is that I can understand, and you might pick up on this because of how much fantasy you read. I don't think the world building is as strong as some of the other series, especially coming from like Massland, because she's, I think, the goat when it comes to world
Yeah.
building.
Very talented. Yeah.
So coming right from that, that is the one thing I will say I understand is like the world building is not as heavy, but for me, it didn't take anything away.
And I am not necessarily looking for like the next best thing I've ever read. I think this will be the perfect book to avoid my book hangover from
Hmm.
finishing the very last mass book that exists that I haven't read right now. Like I literally just went from reading all of Throne of Glass to this third Crescent City book, and so I have been for like, I don't know, 6 months like reading only, I mean not reading only Sarah J Maas books, but like now I don't have one to
Hmm.
read next. So I'm excited to kind of utilize this as my free pass to escape being really sad about not having a fantasy book to read. So, and then there's plenty of other series out there now that I haven't read that I'm eager to get my hands on. So,
Yeah, I honestly think the main reason I haven't started Crescent City is because it's on my Kindle,
yeah,
and
that's fair.
I don't have the books, and I think that's just stopping me from really jumping in. But I need to get over that hurdle. I
Yeah.
will
I would
eventually.
say if you plan on finishing Throne of Glass, finish that.
Yeah, I know. We've talked about this. I don't appreciate being bullied about this.
I'm just
I
trying to give you friendly advice.
I know. Telling you, I leave it on my living room coffee table so that I have to look at it every day, multiple times a day, and I just walk by and flick it off because of I know I need to finish it, and I
Well,
know
you
I'm
need to
going
know
to
what happens to your girl Manon. You
I know,
gotta.
and I know I'm gonna enjoy it. That's the other thing. That's why I get
Mhm.
so mad because I'm like, I know I'm gonna enjoy it, but I think I told you this when I was in Charleston. I'm having the hardest time getting past this like little chunk I'm currently in. So I think
Yeah.
I'm just gonna skip over it. I think after I finish, I think I'm gonna read the Shusterman series just because I'm really in it and I've been reading it so fast. I think I can finish it, and then I think I'm gonna try to go back and I'm just gonna skip over this little chunk of pages that I am frustrated with.
Don't skip too far because shit's about to hit the fan.
I know, but I think I'm just gonna do it, and then if I miss something, I'll just ask you guys because I just don't care enough. Like that's my thing is like
You're gonna miss a big something.
I know, but I just like I don't care. I think that's the thing is like I don't care right now. I'm so frustrated that I don't care if I miss it. I'm okay with just being
Yeah.
told about it and then getting through it to get to the next part, right? Like I
Because you're not doing the tandem read, right?
oh hell no, absolutely not.
Oh man.
I don't have the patience for that. I don't think I could. I'm too I'm reading too many books at the same time to be able to also handle like a tandem read. Just I think my brain would explode.
Yeah. Well,
So
to be continued then. We'll have a lot to chat about when you get there.
Honestly, by the time we get to the next episode, we're going to have 45 other new books to talk about. So this will never be brought up again.
To be determined forever.
Yes, the continuous forever conversation is what it is. But we talked, as always, we talked about so many books. But please read Boys Don't Cry by Fiona Scarlett. Send me pictures of you crying while reading it.
Okay. I will do that happily.
That's to everybody though
sadly,
too. Like
sadly, I'll be doing that.
I want crying pictures from everyone. I'll make a Fiona Scarlett crying Instagram page just so she can know how much this has affected everybody. But truly be in like the right mind state.
The hashtag will be boys don't cry, but girls do.
Yeah. Honestly, probably everybody. Boys are crying.
Everybody's crying.
Yes, in this book or reading this book for sure. So,
well, thank you so much for chatting with me.
Yeah. You can find us on Instagram as always. Fiction Freaks Podcast. Gmail or email fictionfreakspodcast@gmail.com. Our website, fictionfreakspodcast.com.
You can also check out the YouTube videos via that website if you don't want to look for us on YouTube. So that site has everything if you really want to dive into it.
Our Instagram also has all of our links for everywhere you can find us. And if you don't want to look at our faces, that's fine. Continue just listening to us. Google got rid of their podcast. I don't know if people knew that. Or was it Apple? I don't know. One of the two.
No,
I think it was
Apple
Google.
still has theirs.
Google got rid of podcasts. So if you're looking for anybody's podcast on there, you will not find it. But we are streaming everywhere else. So go listen to us.
Thanks for getting your fiction freak on.
See y'all. The end.